Have you ever wondered what the actual fundamental rule book for life is? Today, we're diving deep into that instruction manual, the code of life itself. We're going to break down the basic principles that run every single living thing on our planet using the Edexcel IGCSE Biology textbook as our map. So, let's get right into it. So, let's start with a really simple question. What's the real difference between a rock and a rabbit? I mean, it sounds kind of obvious, right? But the answer goes way deeper than just one being furry and the other not. It's all about a specific checklist, a set of characteristics that every living thing shares, which separates it from the non-living world. And that brings us to our first big idea, the rules of life. I want you to think of all of biology as a kind of game. And it doesn't matter if you're a tiny microbe, a massive blue whale, or, well, you. To even be in the game, you've got to play by the exact same set of rules. And here they are, the 8 non-negotiable rules. First, living things have to interact with the world around them. They move, they breathe or respire to get energy, and they react to what's happening. Then, they have to take care of themselves, controlling their internal temperature, getting food, and getting rid of waste. And finally, the big one. They have to keep the species going, so they grow and they reproduce. If you miss even one of these, you're not in the game of life. Simple as that. Okay, so if those are the rules, what is it that's actually playing the game? What's the fundamental piece, the basic unit that's doing all of this stuff? Well, for that, we need to zoom in, way in, and meet the basic building block of all life. It's the cell. Seriously, this is where everything begins. Every single one of those life processes we just talked about, moving, breathing, growing, it's all happening right at the cellular level. You can think of cells as these tiny, bustling factories where the business of life gets done. In fact, anything smaller than a cell isn't really considered alive. And even though there are tons of different kinds of cells, they're all built from a similar blueprint. Just look at these two here, the animal and plant cells. See? They both have a nucleus, which is like the main office holding the instructions. They have cytoplasm, which is the factory floor where the work happens. They have a cell membrane acting as a security gate, and mitochondria, which are the power plants. But the plant cell has a few extra features, kind of like special upgrades. It's got a tough outer cell wall for extra support, a huge vacuole in the middle to keep it rigid, and of course, these amazing little green things called chloroplasts. Those are the solar panels that let plants make their own food through photosynthesis. All right, so we've seen the factory layout, but how does the work inside the cell actually get done? How does it manage all the chemical reactions it needs to move and grow and just live? Well, it all comes down to the cellular engine. Let's talk about enzymes. Honestly, these guys are the real MVPs of biology. They're special proteins that act as catalysts. All that means is they make chemical reactions happen millions of times faster than they would otherwise. Without enzymes, life would just be too slow to exist. We even use them in things like laundry detergent to break down stains. That's how powerful they are. And the way they work is actually super elegant. It's called the lock and key model, and for a good reason. You see that special shape on the enzyme? That's called the active site. It's a perfect match for only one specific molecule, which we call the substrate, just like how a specific key only fits in one lock. This is how a cell stays in perfect control of all its chemistry. So here's how it goes down step by step. First, the substrate molecule slots into the active site. Then they bind together, and a reaction happens right there, turning the substrate into new things called products. Finally, the products are released, and the enzyme, totally unchanged, is free to do the whole thing over again. It's an incredibly efficient little machine. But all of this work, building things, moving things, it all costs energy, right? So how does a cell pay its bills? It uses a universal energy currency, a single type of molecule that it can spend anywhere for any job that needs doing. And that currency is called ATP. The absolute best way to think about ATP is as a tiny, rechargeable battery. When your cells get energy from food, they use it to charge up a molecule called ADP by adding a phosphate to it. That turns it into the high-energy ATP. Then, whenever a part of the cell needs power, it just snaps that phosphate off, releasing the energy. The leftover ADP can then be recharged all over again. It's a perfect continuous cycle. Okay, so we get how one cell works. But what about us? We're made of trillions of cells. How do you possibly go from one tiny building block to a whole, complete, functioning person? Let's take a look at how life scales up. Believe it or not, every complex organism starts out like this, just one single cell called a zygote. Through a process of division, that one cell becomes two, then those two become four, then eight, and it just keeps going, multiplying over and over again. But here's where the magic really happens. They don't all stay identical. This amazing process called differentiation kicks in, where the cells start to specialize. They change their shape and function to do specific jobs. Some become long, thin nerve cells for sending signals. Others become muscle cells that can contract and create movement. And these specialized cells, they don't work alone. They team up. A whole bunch of similar cells working together forms a tissue, like muscle tissue. Then, different tissues come together to form an organ, like the heart, which is made of muscle tissue, nerve tissue, and blood tissue all working together. And it doesn't even stop there. Those organs then cooperate in what we call organ systems. So the heart, the blood, and the blood vessels all work together as the circulatory system. All of these systems working in harmony are what keeps the whole organism going. It's just a beautiful pyramid of organization. So let's zoom back out for a second and look at the big picture. We've gone from the universal rules of being alive all the way down into the machinery of a single cell, and then built our way back up to a complete system. What we've really been doing is unlocking a fundamental code. And here it is, the most important takeaway of all. Despite all the incredible, wild diversity of life you see on Earth, the underlying operating system is universal. Every single living thing is built from cells. Every cell is run by enzymes, and all of it is powered by the energy currency of ATP. It's the shared code of all life. Which leaves us with a final massive question. This shared code is the whole reason we can study yeast to understand a human disease or use bacteria to create new technologies. So if every living thing is basically running on a different version of the same software, what does that mean for our future ability to debug, rewrite, and maybe even engineer life itself? It's a pretty big thought to leave you with.